If you Google the phrase, the largest open-air prison, you won't find the typical correctional facilities among the search results. Instead, you will discover hundreds of articles about Gaza, a place that is transformed into a real prison for more than 2 million people. The story of Gaza narrates how a once affluent ancient city turned into a trap, how the lives of hundreds of thousands of people became reliant on the provision of water, food, and medicine, and how wars and local conflicts have stolen the future from generations of residents. To understand the true causes of the conflict and the history of this region, we must go deep into the past. Our journey began around 2000 BC, when Canaanites inhabited this land. These early settlers developed sophisticated city-states, each with its own culture and identity. Jericho, known for its massive walls and prosperous agriculture, the coastal city of Jaffa, an elevated fortress. Jebus is today's Jerusalem. In 1700 BC, according to the Bible, following the call of God, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob settled in Canaan, the Promised Land. But the Canaanites' prosperity was not to last. Around 1500 BC, the mighty Egyptian Empire extended its dominion into Canaan, bringing this region under Egyptian control. A few centuries later, the United Kingdom of Israel arose under the leadership of its inaugural king, Saul, followed by the ascension of King David and later his son, Solomon. Jerusalem became the capital, and the first temple was built on the Temple Mount. However, this United Kingdom eventually fragmented due to internal strife, leading to the division into the northern kingdom of Israel, with a capital in Samaria, and the southern kingdom of Judah, with a capital in Jerusalem. The land initially became the predominant home for the Jewish population. However, it subsequently endured multiple conquests by various groups, resulting in a notable decline in the Jewish population residing in the region. One of these conquests was conducted by the Roman Empire, which bestowed the name Palestine upon Judah, intending to sever the Jewish connection to the land of Israel. During this era, Christianity, initially rooted in Judaism, gradually evolved into the dominant religion by the twilight of the Roman Empire. In the 7th century, the Arab conquest ushered in the spread of Islam. This significant development saw the construction of the Dome of the Rock on the ruins of the Second Temple, solidifying Jerusalem's status as a holy city revered by 3 monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Following the capture of this land by the Seljuk Turks, European Christians initiated a series of crusades intending to reclaim the holy city for the Christian faith. For more than 400 years, this territory was ruled by the mighty Ottoman Empire. Regarding Gaza, at the time it became part of the Ottoman Empire, it was an ancient but still decaying settlement with a non-operational port and ruined buildings. However, its strategic importance and the fact that trade routes from Damascus, Petra, Aqaba, and Cairo converged here saved the city from complete decline. Just 150 years after the Ottoman conquest, Gaza became the capital of Palestine, indicating the city's rapid recovery. When American scholar Edward Robinson visited Gaza in 1838, he described it as a thickly populated town larger than Jerusalem, with its old city lying upon a hilltop, while its suburbs laid on the nearby plain. Although Gaza's port was by then inactive, it benefited from trade and commerce because of its position on the caravan route between Egypt and Syria. The end of World War I in 1918 led to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. The territories in the Middle East were divided between the British and French empires. The territory under British rule was called the British Mandate for Palestine. As both Jews and Arabs claimed these lands, tensions grew, leading to acts of violence. During the late 1930s, as the Jewish population in Palestine grew due to fears of persecution under Nazi rule in Germany, the British imposed restrictions on Jewish immigration. In response, Jewish militias emerged, seeking to confront both Arab opposition and challenge British rule. Then, the Holocaust swept across Nazi Germany, claiming the lives of nearly 6 million Jews. After the war, a significant number of Jewish survivors sought refuge in Palestine, further intensifying tensions with the Arab population. Overwhelmed by the situation, Britain began to withdraw from the region. On April 2, 1947, the United Kingdom requested that the question of Palestine be handled by the General Assembly, which proposed an independent Arab state, an independent Jewish state in the city of Jerusalem, the last to be under an international trusteeship system. However, the plan, according to which the Jewish, accounting to only 1/3 of the population, was granted more than 56% of the land, was rejected by the Arabs. They began to form volunteer armies throughout Palestine. Immediately following the declaration of the new state, both superpower leaders, US President Harry Truman and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, recognized the new state. But the Arab League members, Egypt, Transjordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, refused to accept the UN partition plan. They proclaimed the right of self-determination for the Arabs across the whole of Palestine. The Arab states marched their forces into what had, until the previous day, been the British mandate for Palestine, starting the First Arab-Israeli War. After an initial loss of territory by the Jewish state, the tide turned in the Israelis' favor, and they pushed the Arab armies back beyond the borders of the proposed Arab state. In a treaty signed a year after the war began, over 2/3 of historic Palestine, which included West Jerusalem, became part of Israel, while Jordan took control of East Jerusalem and the region known as the West Bank. Egypt, on the other hand, occupied the Gaza Strip. After Israel seized new territories, tens of thousands of Palestinians were forced to flee their homes and took refuge in Gaza. The influx of refugees led to the tripling of Gaza's population, growing from 70,000 to 200,000 in a short time. During the next 2 decades that Egypt maintained control over Gaza, the local population's resistance against Israel didn't stop. Armed Palestinian Fedayeen, many of whom were refugees, constantly attacked Israel, causing retaliation.
Decisive airstrike in history.
In 1967, after another rise in tensions in the region, Israel decided to conduct a preemptive strike on Egyptian airfields and other facilities, beginning its military operation. At the same time, the Israeli military launched a ground offensive on the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula, as well on the Egyptian-occupied Gaza Strip. Having gained a lightning-fast victory over Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, Israel occupied the territory of Gaza for the next 27 years. At this time, Palestinians were able to work in the agriculture, construction, and services industries inside Israel, which improved their financial situation. However, along with economic growth, the local population began to feel discontent with the Israeli settlements that began to appear en masse in the Gaza Strip. The policy, according to which civilian community colonies with Israeli citizens began to appear on the territory belonging to Palestine, has become widespread. In 50 years, such settlers have grown from 10,000 in 1972 to 700,000 in 2022. And despite the fact that international organizations recognize such policies as war crimes, Israel does not agree with them and continues to encourage its residents to create new settlements. This situation's become especially critical in the West Bank, where Palestinians have been pushed into a kind of reservation. 2 decades after the 1967 war, Palestinians initiated their first intifada, or uprising. It was triggered in December 1987 by a traffic accident in Gaza's Jabalia refugee camp, where an Israeli truck collided with a vehicle carrying Palestinian workers, resulting in the tragic death of 4 individuals. This incident led to a series of protests, strikes, and shutdowns, reflecting the mounting frustration and anger of the Palestinian population. During this period, the Egypt-based Muslim Brotherhood established an armed Palestinian faction, known as Hamas, with a significant power base in Gaza. Hamas, dedicated to the destruction of Israel and the establishment of Islamic rule in what it viewed as occupied Palestine, emerged as a rival to Yasser Arafat's secular Fatah party, which led the Palestine Liberation Organization. Hope for a peaceful resolution of the conflict emerged in 1993, when Israel and the Palestinians signed a historic peace agreement that led to the creation of the Palestinian Authority.
The Israelis and Palestinians.
Under the interim agreement, the Palestinians gained limited control over Gaza and Jericho in the West Bank for the first time. The Oslo process granted the newly created Palestinian Authority some autonomy and provided for the granting of statehood in 5 years. But these plans were not to be realized. believing that such an agreement with Israel is unacceptable and that the complete expulsion of Israelis from all historical lands should be sought. Hamas and Islamic Jihad launched a series of terrorist acts with the aim of undermining the signing of a peace treaty. Israel accused the Palestinians of backtracking on security agreements, and the Palestinians were outraged by the continued construction of Israeli settlements. The outbreak of the Second Palestinian Intifada in 2000 brought about additional destruction in Gaza. In response to Palestinian shootings and bombings, Israel responded by tightening its control over the region, imposing curfews, establishing new no-go zones, and demolishing Gaza's international airport, which was the region's sole connection to the outside world not under the control of Egypt or Israel. Another casualty of this conflict was Gaza's fishing industry, which served as a source of income for tens of thousands. Israel reduced Gaza's fishing zone, citing the necessity to prevent boats from smuggling weapons. In August 2005, Israel withdrew all of its troops and settlers from Gaza, a territory that was entirely isolated from the outside world at that time. Following the withdrawal, Palestinians dismantled the abandoned buildings and infrastructure to salvage scrap metal. Numerous factories, greenhouses, and workshops owned by Israelis and employing Gazans were left behind. Nonetheless, the white economy gave way to a tunnel economy, as armed groups, smugglers, and entrepreneurs swiftly excavated dozens of tunnels to Egypt, ensuring the uninterrupted flow of smuggled goods. In 2006, Hamas achieved an unexpected victory in the Palestinian parliamentary elections and subsequently seized full control of Gaza, ousting forces loyal to President Mahmoud Abbas, who had succeeded Arafat. In response to Hamas being considered a terrorist organization by a significant part of the international community, many countries reduced their assistance to the Palestinians in the Hamas-controlled territories. Furthermore, Israel imposed bans on tens of thousands of Palestinian workers from entering the country, resulting in the loss of an important source of income for many Palestinians. Citing security concerns, both Israel and Egypt imposed stricter restrictions on the movement of people and goods through the Gaza crossings. While in 2000, the border between Gaza and Israel was crossed about 500,000 times a month, in 2007, this number dropped to almost zero. During that period, Israeli airstrikes also disabled Gaza's sole power plant, leading to widespread power outages in a region. What made Gaza even more dependent on Israel, not only in access to the outside world, but also an electricity supply. Hamas's ambitious plans to reorient Gaza's economy eastward, moving it away from Israel, ultimately failed from the outset. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who assumed power in 2014 as the Egyptian military-backed leader, perceived Hamas as a threat. He subsequently closed the border with Gaza and demolished most of the tunnels, leading to the isolation and economic decline of Gaza once more. Gaza's economy has endured a recurring cycle of hardship due to conflicts, attacks, and retaliations between Israel and Palestinian militant groups. One of the most severe instances of this was in 2014, when Hamas and other groups launched rockets at major Israeli cities. In response, Israel conducted airstrikes and artillery bombardments, leading to the devastation of neighborhoods in Gaza. The toll was heavy, with over 2,100 Palestinians killed, primarily civilians, while Israel reported only 67 soldiers and 6 civilians among its casualties. The latest Hamas attack in 2023 came as a surprise to Israel. Israel believed that it was restraining the war-weary Hamas by providing economic incentives to Gazan workers. In 2022, the number of border crossings between Israel and Gaza increased almost 5 times compared to the previous year. By focusing on fulfilling the economic needs of the region's inhabitants, the Netanyahu government was confident that this would deter Hamas from any confrontation. Israel believed that it was restraining the war-weary organization by providing economic incentives to Gazan workers. Still, it was a mistake. On October 7th, Hamas gunmen launched a surprise attack on Israel, causing chaos in towns, resulting in hundreds of casualties, and taking dozens of hostages back to Gaza. In retaliation, Israel responded with airstrikes, devastating entire districts, resulting in one of the deadliest conflicts in the past 75 years. The unexpected Hamas attack claimed the lives of about 1,400 Israeli citizens and foreigners. Israel's military response led to more than 9,000 deaths in Gaza in the first month of the war. Although the Palestinian death toll is difficult to verify, it's almost certainly in the thousands. The harsh response to the terrorist attack and the Israeli destruction of civilian objects have made bombing deaths a common occurrence in Gaza. While both sides die in these clashes, if we compare the number of Israeli deaths in recent years with the number of Palestinians, we see that the latter are dying more, much more. Violence breeds violence. By attempting to destroy Hamas, Israel is only provoking a new wave that has every chance of repeating itself in decades to come. According to international organizations, every third Palestinian killed by Israeli bombing is a child. Today, teenagers in Gaza see their friends dying, their parents crying, and rockets destroying their homes. Even if Israel destroys Hamas, the generation of Palestinians who will grow up hating Israel will not disappear. And history could repeat itself again in decades to come. How can Gazans be afraid of imprisonment or any punishment for their aggression against Israel, if they've already lived their entire lives in the largest open-air prison in the world? The issue of a peaceful solution to the situation in the Middle East is too complex to be contained in a single video. However, with every rocket, every illegal Israeli settlement, and every life destroyed, the hope of a peaceful future for this region becomes more and more elusive. The Gaza Strip's an example of how a nation that sees itself being wiped off the map becomes increasingly radicalized. How this radicalization leads to the rise of terrorist organizations, which in turn launch new acts of violence. How the death of one Israeli leads to the death of 10 Palestinians. And how history repeats itself again. We spend hundreds of hours preparing, analyzing, and editing each video. In most cases, YouTube does not allow monetization of content related to military conflicts. So the only way for us to continue producing such materials is through your support. You can help our channel by clicking the join button below this video or becoming a sponsor on Patreon. Links below the video.